Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
It was good. We had a great idea for a show about a week or two ago. It was like, we're going to put together the Big Ten pods for the new Big Ten scheduling thing. How hard can it possibly be? And Tony, the answer is actually pretty darn difficult. So I'm glad we don't have to do this for real. How are you?
Doing well. Yes, I was putting together my pods as well, and the teams that will stick together, and they're not going to be not everybody's going to be thrilled, and I think that's my main takeaway is you can't possibly make all of these entities happy. The best you can do is not make them furious. So you've got to give something to everybody, and I don't think you can make I don't know, Tom, can you make, is it okay to make one program thrilled, like they get everything they want, and then other programs like don't get anything that they want other than leftovers? And Tom, another thing I found, there are quite a few leftovers in this exercise.
There are quite a few leftovers. You go through and, you look at I made this analogy. We talked about this sort of at a higher level on the episode of the Morning Scoop that's going to be dropping on Tuesday. And if you go through like the SEC's scheduling arrangement, they do one protected cross-division game every year, and a lot of them are very logical. Alabama plays Tennessee the third Saturday in October rivalry, sure. Georgia plays Auburn, the Old South's deepest rivalry, sure, absolutely. These all make tremendous sense. Missouri and Arkansas play every year because they play your bordering states. Like, yeah, absolutely. Makes perfect sense. And then there's Mississippi State and Kentucky. And the answer is, well, we had two teams left, and those were the two teams. And now they play every year because we had two teams left. And you do this, and it's just like, you do end up with a bunch of random teams left, and it's like, why would those two teams possibly play each other every year? It's like, well, because we had two teams left.
It's a lot like in school, we're like, all right, everybody grab lab partners, and the two people without lab partners then get put together. Like in my breakdowns, Rutgers was left with a lot of lonely lab partners, and you just like, hey, you're together. Like you didn't have anybody else, and so you're gonna have to make life work here. And so, Tom, just to let the listeners know and the viewers know, like there's no rundown on this show. It's going to be a rambling state of affairs. We've each put together our schedules of I did a 3 protected team schedule in the Big Ten. I've done 2 protected. I've done 1 protected, and we talked about this on the Morning Scoop. The big question is, we both believe divisions are going to be gone next year in the Big Ten. At least, is that correct, Tom? You believe that as well? And so then the question becomes, how many conference games will they be playing? Because the ACC's perfect example in their 14-team league is 3 protected rivals, and then you play the other 10 teams over twice over a 5-year period. Tom, is that correct?
Yes, if you're playing 8 conference games and there's 13 other teams in the conference, so there's a 14-team conference and you don't play yourself, so you're playing 13 other teams. You play 3 protected rivals, and then over a 4-year span, you would play the other 5 teams home and home once each over that span. Now that's 8 conference games instead of 9, which is what the Big Ten does. So that kind of throws the math off a little bit, but you would be guaranteed to at least, with a 3 protected team model for the Big Ten and 9 conference games, you would play everybody home and home in that 4-year span, and there's a couple teams you would be playing more than twice in that span that were not protected rivals. It's all kind of a mess. And then if they add another team in conference expansion, well, that changes the math again, and so it gets even messier. So we have to kind of make some assumptions here. The way the math works out, if you're playing 9 conference games, you have 5 protected rivals. That would be the way the math would work out to play everyone in a 4-year span. 5 protected rivals, and then you play 4, there would be 8 other teams. You'd play 4 of them home and home the first 2 years and 4 of them home and home the second 2 years. but 5 protected rivals is a lot. You're basically back to divisions at that point, so that doesn't seem like what they're probably going to do.
Yeah, and the key is that a 4-year student athlete will get to see everywhere, get to see every conference place and stadium, and that would be just a nice bonus, because you don't get that in the SEC, where you would have to be a 12th year senior to have seen every stadium in the SEC. So, and not saying that that hasn't been the case in the SEC. I'm sure there have been a few, but the idea, like, I'm with you, Tom. I don't think you need to go 5 protected. Just make the math work another way. Like, just do the scheduling as, you'll see enough of, like, if you miss a team over a 5-year period or 4-year period, it's not the end of the world. I don't think you need to go 5 teams in a protected pod there. But let's look at, did you put together like a 5-team pod as well?
I did not. I just did 3. 5 seemed like too much. I just did 3, and I did it in a everyone has one. I kind of did a 1, 2, 3 model essentially, and the first column was very interesting to me, because the first column, it was like, well, everyone has one very easy, neat team to tuck in here. It all fits exactly. It's, everyone has that sort of end of season rival. It's Nebraska, Iowa, it's Ohio State, Michigan, it's Penn State, Michigan State, it's Rutgers, Maryland. Everyone has that team they play the last week of the season every year. So it's like, okay, whoever that is, that feels like team number 1. And then it was like, oh, this is going to be way easier than I thought. And then you get to the second row, and it's just like, oh, Lord, oh no, none of this doesn't work. And then you shuffle things around, and it's like, no, that doesn't work either. And then you shuffle things around, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess Indiana and Maryland are just going to have to play. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but good luck out there.
So I'm interested because even in the 1 protected rival, things get a little messy, like, and there can be arguments. Who is your Penn State protected rival?
I had the sanctity of the land grant trophy must be protected at all costs. So Penn State and Michigan State, and those are just teams that have they were kind of like thrown together in 1993. It was like, well, Penn State needs to play someone in the last week of the season every year. We're going to make up a trophy, and as happens in college football, someone just makes a decision, invents some crap, makes an ugly trophy, and then 30 years later, Tony, it's tradition. You can't mess with tradition. Come on, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, there's manufactured tradition like that, or there's tradition that occurs organically that then becomes something. And I feel like, because I want to talk about Nebraska and Iowa, because I put them together as a protected rivalry, and that is both manufactured and organic, which I think is perfect for the farming community, where most of the seeds are manufactured and organic, and yet, but they're biologically enhanced. I'm not saying anybody at Nebraska or Iowa are biologically enhanced, but I think that is a rivalry that, I guess I could go look at Wikipedia and see how often they've played, but it is certainly ramped up now that they're in the same division, same conference, and that fits naturally. It's something. It was the Friday after Thanksgiving. That's when they play. It's like the 2 teams, and then also when they play creates this sort of rivalry aspect to it. You know when it is. I think that's a huge thing where these games that fluctuate, like Ohio State, Michigan State. When is it? Well, it just depends on the schedule. Like, but if you are the same time every year, like Ohio State, Michigan, like Iowa and Nebraska, it means a little bit more.
It definitely does. And those are teams, Nebraska and Iowa are teams that played a good bit before before Nebraska joined the Big Ten. It's a little like Ohio State and Penn State, where they had played a few times before they joined, because it's like, okay, these are teams that sort of go together. Iowa and Nebraska have played a total of 53 or 52 times. So, that's really, they go back to 1891. So, that's one that does make a lot of sense. And they do play on the Friday after Thanksgiving, which is just kind of like, now this is their thing. And, the tradition is that they come in and Nebraska almost wins and then doesn't win. And then and then everyone gets home from Black Friday shopping, and then it's time to go watch the Ohio State Michigan game the next day. That's kind of like how that series has gone. I'm just looking through the last 4 games. Iowa wins by 3. Iowa wins by 3. Iowa wins by 6. Iowa wins by 7. Like, oh boy, those have been 4 very painful season-ending losses in a row for Nebraska. But yeah, I mean, I think it's at this point like that was one that, you know, even as they were the first time they played it, it was like, you know, Michigan State, Penn State, it was always kind of a joke that it was kind of this very manufactured rivalry, and it's just sort of like turned into now one that's been a little bit more meaningful. Iowa, Nebraska, from the first time they scheduled it was just like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. Those are, I mean, there's states that are close together. Nebraska is like an hour from the Iowa border. It is it's a very, very, you know, it's a logical rivalry. It's two teams that, like, absolutely, like, yes, these two teams fit together wonderfully. I have seen no reason to pull them apart. Do you just want to go through the pairings for the first week? I'm guessing, or the first line, does that make sense? You just want to run through those?
Yeah, I think we might be.
I assume we're going to have probably the same teams for all of these, but Illinois, Northwestern, okay, they play for the Abe Lincoln hat thing. Indiana, Purdue for the Old Oaken Bucket. Iowa, Nebraska for Farmageddon. Maryland, Rutgers, because they walked into the club at the same time, so now congratulations, now you're together. Michigan, Ohio State, because it is Michigan, Ohio State. Michigan State, Penn State, because Michigan State and Penn State need a team, and needed a team 30 years ago, and now they're friends. Look at that. Minnesota, Wisconsin for the Paul Bunyan Axe. Let's see, Nebraska. See, the challenging thing is I have each of these teams on here twice. I think I've got, I think that's all of them. Yeah, I have all these teams listed, so all these games are on here twice. That should be all 7. So yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what I have. It makes the most sense. It keeps everybody happy, and then you try to. Well, that was easy. I'm sure it's going to be easy to do it a second time and make everybody even happier, because you know what's great, what's better than one protected rival, Tom? 2 protected rivals. Except now Maryland and Rutgers enter the chat. Like, they no longer just have a chat between themselves. Now they enter everybody else's chat, and you're like, oh God, I hope they don't enter my chat. But they're gonna.
Yeah, there were teams a couple years ago. It was New Mexico State and someone. It was someone really random. It was like New Mexico State and UConn or something. And they were both independents, and they both needed to, like, fill out their schedules. This might have been a 2020 thing. And it was just like, well, we're going to play twice. So Rutgers and Maryland, what if your protected rival was the other one, but 3 times? Like, who says no? I'm guessing a lot of people will say no. But yeah, This is where you start going through, and it's just like you can go through and try and be logical. It's like, okay, Illinois has another trophy game. They have a trophy game with Purdue for the Cannon thing. Okay, great. Fantastic. Iowa, Minnesota, they play for Floyd of Rosedale. Fantastic. Second protected rivalry. Michigan State, very obvious second rivalry there. You know, and then you get to, like, well, Wisconsin's close to Northwestern, so sure, let's have Wisconsin and Northwestern play. Rutgers is going to want to have someone other than Maryland, and who is Rutgers going to want to play? Well, Rutgers is really going to want to play Penn State. So, okay, we're going to put Rutgers and Penn State in there now, and we're just going to kind of put a pin in that one and hold it. And then you're left over with, like, I ended up putting Ohio State and Nebraska here because it's like these are, you know, it's a helmet game, right? It's a game that no one's going to mind watching Ohio State and Nebraska because it's 2 of the famous brands, and, you know, it's like Ohio State already has Michigan. And, you know, Ohio State is not going to want to play Maryland or whatever, so you're not necessarily going to throw that in there. But so that's a good helmet game, okay, even if it's, you know, the series has been lopsided, it's still 2 pretty good brands. And then, you know, I'm trying to figure out if I've said all 7 or not. This is very difficult because I have all of these teams on here twice. Minnesota and Iowa playing. Oh, Indiana and Maryland were kind of the last one where it's just like, well, you guys have played every year since 2014. Let's call that a rivalry. Absolutely, sure, because you were the last 2 standing. The music has stopped, so now you guys get to play. And it just, I shuffled things around and I tried to come up with a better group of pairings, and it was just like you would end up with just a different weird game at the end, and there wasn't necessarily a good, clean, easy option. What did you end up with that second group?
I'm looking at my group of 2, and then also looking at my group of 3, and I'm seeing that, like, I didn't start with a group of 2 when I went to the group of 3. Like, so there's differences there. And I think that is indicative of, 1, I'm not a copy and paster, but 2, like, this can change every time you do it. Like, once you get past 1 and you do it again, you could get it completely different with a 2. And you're almost certainly going to get it differently in a group of 3, unless you've memorized it, because there's some of the groupings that don't make any sense. But in the 2, like, I went with Illinois and Indiana instead of Illinois and Purdue. Purdue, I gave Rutgers because somebody has to take Rutgers. I went with Ohio State having Michigan and Penn State because Penn State is the number 2 rival for the Big Ten. Like, that might be the number 2 game in the Big Ten, so they're probably not going to want to get rid of it. So then I gave, let's see, for whatever reason, and this could be a new rivalry, Nebraska and Michigan State. Like, that's helmet-ish, that's helmet adjacent. Like, that's something where you've got 2 established programs. Of course, Iowa and Minnesota has to stick. Maryland and Penn State, you gave Penn State Rutgers, or you gave Rutgers Penn State. I gave, Maryland at 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I think that's going to be in play there. The key, I think, for Penn State to keep Penn State happy is, don't give us both Rutgers and Maryland. We'll take one, because Penn State wanted the Big Ten to push east as well. So this is the cross that they will have to bear. But they're like, don't give us 2 crosses. Like, just one, please. And so whichever one you want to throw in there, but it no longer fits. Like, you're putting puzzle pieces that aren't cut for each other into place now. And so it's not going to look like, the picture is not going to look like it was drawn, because it doesn't make any sense, because you've got so many different pieces that you're just, you're pounding your fist to get them to stick. And it's like, just be happy with it. Like, does it look like it's supposed to on the box? No, but the box was a lie.
Well, and the other challenging thing here is that you're trying to balance traditional rivalries, and, there are teams that are going to want, Purdue and Indiana are going to want to play every year, and, the teams are going to want to play as many of those traditional rivalry games as they can. So you've got that piece. You also have these teams are not going to want to, like, Rutgers, if you gave them Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State, it would be like, well, that's good in one way, in that our stadium will be filled every other year with fans from those opposing teams. But also, on the negative side, we're going to die. So that would not be great. I think Rutgers and Maryland are teams that might benefit the most from being in a pod system and not having Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State on the schedule every single year. So you've got that. And then there's some where it's just like, well, you can factor in sort of proximity too. Like, I have, Wisconsin, Northwestern, because Wisconsin and Northwestern are not very far apart from each other. So it's kind of like a little bit of a geographical rivalry. You've got some schools, there are schools that have trophy games, and it's not, you don't think of Indiana, Michigan State as this big rivalry, but I have Indiana and Michigan State in my third column, because it's like, well, they play for the brass spittoon every year, so it's like, okay, that's enough of a thing. That's enough of a tie-in that it's not a completely random thing. Okay, sure. But you're trying to balance all of these things, and you cannot satisfy all of the different wants at the same time. You cannot satisfy the, Rutgers and Maryland want to have Penn State, and also satisfy Penn State wants to have Ohio State and Michigan and, maybe Michigan State. I think Michigan State might be the third biggest want for Penn State, but not, this is all about compromise. Like the old line, a good compromise leaves everyone angry. It feels like no matter how you do this, everyone's going to be angry about something. Either my schedule is too hard, or we're not playing a team that I really want to be playing every year, or we have to travel too far, and why is our protected rival 600 miles away when there's a bunch of schools that are closer than that? Everyone is going to be a little bit unhappy with how this sorts out, and that's just kind of how it goes. And, I feel like people, if you were sitting at home and thinking, you morons, like this can't possibly be that hard, you start with Ohio State, and of course they're going to want to play Penn State and Michigan every year. How hard can it be? Well, then you immediately blocked out all these other schools that also probably want to play Ohio State or want to play Penn State. If Penn State also was going to play Michigan State, Ohio State, well, then Rutgers and Maryland, don't get to play Penn State, they don't get to play Ohio State, they don't get to play Maryland or Michigan as a protected rival, and then they're going to have a big problem with that. So you're going to have to, everyone kind of has to sacrifice or end up with kind of like at least one kind of like, yeah, it's a little weird kind of thing. But it's just kind of how it works itself out. And even then, you end up with some with some weird ones. Like, I'm sorry, Indiana and Maryland, no offense, but I do not think of you guys together at all. Like, it's like the couple where you're like, so how did you guys get together? Like, did you meet online, or was it one of those weird sites? How'd you guys meet?
Catalog. I just wish these schools could be happy with the $100 million they're going to make a year from the television networks.
That will go a long way, I think, towards smoothing out some hurt feelings. And what is tradition if not something that can be replaced by money? I mean, I think that's and this is a lot of this is a byproduct of everything being made secondary to TV and TV revenue. Like, there's a lot that has been sacrificed about the game day experience in the stadium that has been, to the gods of TV and the gods of TV revenue. And this is, this is maybe not the most egregious example of it, but it's kind of another example of it where it's just, a lot of the traditional stuff is kind of getting set aside because the TV people will say, okay, we will give you $5 million extra per year with that. And everyone wants to upgrade their facilities, and everyone wants to give all their coaches a little salary bump and all that stuff. And so here we are.
I just realized, and Tom, we could probably just create trophies for these weird matchups. Like, Indiana, Maryland could just become the Stacks of Cash trophy game. I do realize what I did, and this could be perhaps the Mafia Cup. I have Rutgers attached to Northwestern in Illinois. Mafia, obviously big in New Jersey, big in Chicago and Illinois. I also have in that group Maryland, and what is a bigger mafia than the U.S. government? So right there, whoever wins that wins like the Mafia Cup, and that's something that becomes a thing. I like the Stacks of Cash trophy game. I don't know. Just looking through my other three, a lot of these make complete sense. But Tom, what are some of your ones that just don't make sense?
Well, I'll go through. I'm just going to go through all 14 of them, and we can just sort of raise our hands when we go, "That's stupid. What kind of an idiot are you?" And I'll say, "We've done 600 episodes of this. If you haven't figured that out by now, maybe I'm not the only idiot." Anyway, so Illinois, Northwestern, very logical, in-state rival. Purdue, they play for a Cannon Trophy every year. Sure. Number 3, Rutgers. Reasons? Sure, why not? I do like your idea of the it fell off the back of a truck trophy. I like that one.
Perfect.
That's a good one. And it's a weird one, but I think also, like, deep down, is Greg Schiano going to be super mad that he's playing Illinois every year and not Michigan State and Ohio State? He's probably not going to be that mad, because you know what? That's one win closer to bowl eligibility at least every other year. And Brett Bielema, I'm guessing, also is viewing that as a winnable game every single year. So it's a little weird, but I don't know that you're really going to get that much pushback on that one. Indiana, I had Purdue, obviously. Maryland for, shrug emoji. And Michigan State for the rivalry there. So, okay, I think those are okay. The Maryland one's weird. The Maryland one is objectively weird, but that's just how it goes.
Can I stop you for a sec?
You sure can.
Exactly the same on the first two. Like,
okay,
both schools were exactly the same. So logic is winning at this point.
All right. Next up is Iowa. I've got Nebraska for the traditional rivalry, Minnesota for the Floyd of Rosedale, and I've got Wisconsin. I think those are Big Ten West teams that have played a bunch over the years and have been pretty good. And so I don't know that anyone's going to argue if those two teams are playing. Are you on the same boat there?
I went Purdue instead of Wisconsin, but I'm breezy.
All right, Maryland, Rutgers, Indiana, as mentioned, but I gave them Michigan for the third one because it's like, you're not going to get Penn State because Penn State can only play 3 teams, and we'll get to Penn State in a little bit, but okay, you're getting a brand name Big Ten East team. Michigan gets a winnable third game there. I think that I don't know that it's a little weird, but I don't know that anyone's going to really fight you on it necessarily. Michigan has Ohio State, Michigan State, obviously, and then Maryland. Who did you have for Michigan's third?
Minnesota.
Okay, and yeah,
I kept them together, so that's why the only difference I had with Minnesota, or with Maryland rather, I have them having Penn State instead of Michigan, because I needed Michigan to be free for OSU, MSU, and Minnesota for the Little Brown Jug.
And I think that's that's one of those trophy games where you're going to have the trophy games that you keep, like the Old Oak and Bucket, you're the Florida Rosedale, Paul Bunyan's Axe, all that stuff. You're going to keep as many of those as you can. The Little Brown Jug, they have not played. That has not been a protected rivalry for Michigan, so that's not one that is necessarily totally sacred to me, which is, one of the reasons is that I think that series has been wildly lopsided. I think Minnesota's won it like once or twice since like 1986. So, it's a trophy, but it's a little more. I'm a little more willing to sacrifice that one, similar to Illibuk. Like, it's a trophy. They've played for a long time, but the series has been pretty lopsided. It hasn't been protected for that long, so it's not necessarily a deal breaker to me.
The reason it holds a special place in my heart is because it holds a special place in Glenn Mason's heart. Like, it means a lot to Minnesota when they win it, and anytime a coach goes and takes a trophy to a bar and just hangs out and is like, "Hey, look at my trophy," I think that earns some cred. Like Urban Meyer, Jim Tressel never took Illibuk to the Bogey Inn, and hey, look at my trophy. For one, the team never gets the trophy. Like they get it out on the field, but then it goes back to some student organization. So whatever, it's if it was a real turtle, sure, but it's a wooden turtle. So it does not mean that much to me in terms of I think the jug means more to me than the turtle, but obviously it's, like you said, it hasn't been a protected game for a while, and it comes and goes. So, I mean, clearly both programs have accepted that possibility.
Yeah, and, I don't know that I'm willing to say that Urban Meyer never took the Illibuk to a bar. I've only seen a video of Urban Meyer once in a bar, and while I did not see the Illibuk, I was also focused on other things watching that video. So I don't know that we can definitively say he's never done it, but I have yet to see proof that he has. Next one is Michigan State. Michigan State is... Did we do Michigan already?
Yes, we did.
Yes, okay. Michigan State, of all the teams, probably comes out the best of anyone for me, and I think you said that Michigan State comes out like the weirdest or the worst for you, so this should be interesting. Michigan State, I've got with Penn State, Michigan, very obviously, and then Indiana, which is the rivalry spittoon game.
Same.
Yeah, okay, so the same, okay. Minnesota, I have Wisconsin, Paul Bunyan Axe game, Iowa, Floyd of Rosedale game, and Nebraska, which that is the $5 Bits of Broken Chair trophy, which is, like the humorously manufactured trophy, not just the official conference manufactured trophy. But they're, neighboring states, and I think that kind of works. What did you have for Minnesota?
I have Michigan instead of Nebraska. I also think this is an opportunity, and they will play everybody, but this is also an opportunity to protect a West team playing an East team. Like, does Minnesota have to play 3 West teams every year? And the West terminology will go away, but I don't have an issue with because I also I guess I protected 2 West teams and then Michigan against Minnesota, but I was looking for a little variety, but the schedule itself is where the real variety comes, and the keeping is more a product of we've been playing these teams every year, so obviously that's probably going to be your current division opponents. But I don't have an issue like Minnesota and Nebraska. I'm perfectly cool with that, and so is, I'm sure, Minnesota. They'd probably rather play Nebraska than Michigan, I'm thinking.
I would guess that's they would view that as a more winnable game more often than not. So you're gonna, as you said, you're gonna have more variety. Minnesota and Michigan are gonna play more under this schedule regardless, whether they're a protected rival or not, just like Ohio State and Illinois are going to play more often, whether they're a protected rival or not. So you do get a little more variety on that front.
I think it's hard to get too mad because of that, Like, programs shouldn't be, I'm going to put my foot down. It's like, chill, you're still going to play everybody, in a 4-year span, you'll see them. Don't worry.
All right, next up, Nebraska. I have Nebraska with Iowa, which we've talked about. Ohio State, which you don't think of that as necessarily a a true rivalry, but that was a protected crossover game under the old, under the system leading up to I think last year was the final year of that before they switched. So that's a rivalry that the Big Ten sees some value in. And I think, like I said, you get the helmet game that you think back, and that has had a higher TV profile than the records probably would have deserved over the years. There have been a lot of games that were ended up Ohio State 56-14 or 56-7 kind of games that ended up on ABC primetime, because it's like these two, you get the opening on ABC where you get the Tom Osborne footage and the Bob Devaney footage and the Woody Hayes footage and all the historical footage that, these two, it's the opening to every Notre Dame broadcast ever when they have nothing to sell but 1975. Like that's what that game is. And, Nebraska is theoretically at some point going to get better. So that would potentially be a bigger draw in the future. But I think, that's a trip I never mind making. We have said a bunch of times that's both of our favorite Big Ten road trips. So maybe there's a little selfish something in here as well. But Nebraska has Iowa, Ohio State, and Minnesota for me. What about you?
I also Ohio State, Iowa. I do think Ohio State, Nebraska, it's just a good fit. The third team I had for Nebraska, though, was Wisconsin, which I also think is a good fit. But who's your third team for Nebraska? Minnesota? Yeah. Yeah. And really, again, it's 6-1, half dozen of the other. It just, what team is left over. This was the first two for Nebraska, very easy for me. And then it just became a matter of Wisconsin was one of the leftovers because Minnesota I had already slated out. So I'm good with either of those. I think they work.
And Wisconsin-Nebraska does not feel like a leftover game. That feels like absolutely. Like you could swap out Minnesota for Wisconsin, and it feels like, okay, that's a Big 12 or Big 10 West game. Like, sure, absolutely. That I wouldn't blanch at that one the way I would look at Iowa, Maryland, or something like that. Northwestern, I just went pretty much straight geography on this. It is three schools that you can. I mean. The L doesn't quite reach all of these campuses, but like if they build it out a little more, you might be able to just take the L all the way there. Northwestern, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Purdue, three geographically closest teams to them. And, Illinois is an in-state rival, Wisconsin is super close, and Purdue is super close. So sure, Northwestern is not a school that, because they've been such crap over, historically, they don't have a lot of, natural rivals necessarily outside of geographically created ones. So I think those are the three that would make the most sense.
Yeah, I went Purdue, or I went Rutgers instead of Purdue. One of those things where I got to put Rutgers somewhere, and I've already put Purdue. Purdue is what it is, but I needed to put Rutgers somewhere. 3 times, Tom. All right, one is a given, and then the second is it going to be Maryland or Rutgers for Penn State? And then the third one is just a complete, I'll throw a dart and whatever it lands on, now you have Rutgers. Sorry, call the CDC.
And that was basically Maryland for me. You and I approached the same problem from two different angles. Maryland was kind of like Rutgers and then Indiana and Michigan, I guess. And you did that with Rutgers, which is, I can't imagine why those two teams would be weird cultural fits in the Big Ten, almost like they don't belong in the league. Anyway, so let's move on to Ohio State. Michigan, because it is Michigan. Nebraska, because of, helmet game and all that. And then Penn State. I think those are three games that Ohio State is not going to mind playing three strong opponents every year. Those are three teams that they have been tied reasonably close to over the last, 10 years or 30 years or 120 years or so. So, yeah, I think those, I didn't start out with this setting out to make this, like you fill out Ohio State's 3 lines and then you go do everything else. But I feel like that worked out reasonably well for Ohio State.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I have as well. And if you want to put Michigan State instead of Penn State, I'm not going to throw a huge fight because, again, you'll see Penn State enough. But it just feels like the Big Ten, more than anybody else, is going to say no. Ohio State and Penn State are protected rivals, whether Ohio State or Penn State put up a fight or not, because the game does so well. And it's what is Penn State going to do without Ohio State to have a whiteout? We may find out this year. But they obviously like having Ohio State come to town every other year, and Ohio State loves it as well.
Penn State, Rutgers, whiteout. Who says no? Other than Penn State, who says no? Let's move to Penn State. I have Michigan State first for them. Rutgers second, because this is one of these, like, Rutgers has to have a vote. This is because you have let them in the door. It's like a vampire. Once you invite them in, like, now you've made a terrible mistake, but now they're here. So get out your garlic. Here's Rutgers. See, that works on a couple levels. So you've got Michigan State, you got Rutgers, and then if you don't give Penn State Ohio State, like, they are going to, they will be on to the fact that there has been a massive anti-Penn State conspiracy for the last 30 years, and you got to keep them in the dark on that, so therefore you kind of have to give them Ohio State. I'm with you. Like, if you replace the Penn State game with Michigan State on the Ohio State end, yeah, I don't think I don't think you're losing anything huge, and, maybe you swap Michigan in for, Ohio State in that third spot maybe, and then it's Michigan State, Rutgers, and Michigan. They would probably be okay with that, but, I think Ohio State is what Penn State aspires to be as a program right now, so you probably, that is the big game, because that's the one that they really, 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 really want to win. So I think they would have a fit if they didn't have Ohio State, so you put Ohio State on that list.
That is an interesting question. Would Penn State, obviously they want to beat Ohio State more than they want to beat Michigan, but would they rather have a better opportunity for a win against Michigan than having to play Ohio State every year and getting an opportunity to avoid Ohio State every year out of every, 5 or whatever, knowing then that you would probably still have to play them in the Big Ten championship game, but it would only be once. Does Penn State really want to play Ohio State twice in a Big Ten championship, in a season? So I am interested. I wonder if Penn State fans wouldn't mind not having Ohio State as one of the rivals, as long as it's Michigan, because you do need the big name. But yeah, I have the same thing as you for Penn State, except Maryland instead of Rutgers, and again, whatever you want to do there.
I feel like if you're looking at programs and, like, which programs are going to want the big names in town and which programs are going to want the potential W's on the schedule, it feels like Rutgers is at the level where, like, they should want to see Illinois, because you want to get to 6, 7 wins, 8 wins. Penn State, if Penn State is what Penn State pretends to be, Penn State should be looking to play Ohio State every year. Like, you shouldn't be trying to, backdoor your way into a trip to Indy by not playing Ohio State. That's how Northwestern gets to, wins the Big Ten championship game, is by not playing Ohio State in 1995 and 1996. Like, that's, if you're Penn State and you're paying your football coach $1 trillion and you're going to put a huge, massive renovation of Beaver Stadium, like, if you're doing it seriously enough and at this level that that you are acting like you are, you should want to play Ohio State. I think, I think every Penn State fan would say that they want to play Ohio State. If you gave them truth serum, would they really mind it? Maybe, maybe not. But it's, I think they have to. I don't think there's a way you can do this without giving Penn State Ohio State. Or having Penn State fans just completely lose their minds. So next up, Purdue, Indiana, obviously the bucket game, Illinois, the Cannon game, and then Northwestern, because is close to West Lafayette. Those are, again, 3 teams that are the geographically closest to Penn State or to Purdue, I think. And I think culturally they've played in the Big Ten West enough that it's like you've got a history there. You're all kind of about the same level. Like, it's probably not a bad thing to have a bunch of those Big Ten teams who are kind of like mid-ish, 50th percentile to 25th percentile maybe in the conference, playing each other every year, because then you end up with the one team that ends up 9-3 and is like, oh, look at them. Good for them. They got to the Outback Bowl this year. Like, you can sort of schedule your way into that team a little bit, and that's probably not a bad thing for any of them.
And the good news is that 9-3 team, good news for the Big Ten, won't necessarily be playing in the Big Ten championship game. They may be third at that point, and then the 2 best teams, like that 9-3 team, isn't winning the Big Ten West because the Big Ten West is gone, and instead they're probably third in the standings. I had Northwestern instead of Iowa. That's all. Of course, Indiana, and sure, why not Illinois? But I just had them Northwestern, and it's not a great schedule. But again, Purdue's not looking for a schedule from the late 80s where you're just playing 3 conference, Power 5, ranked opponents like everybody did back then. They could stand to get, they're looking for 2 wins basically, I think, in their 3 protected rivalry games every year if they can get it.
And I had Indiana, Illinois, Northwestern as well. I don't know if I said it wrong or if you heard it wrong, but yeah.
No. I have Iowa instead of Northwestern.
Oh, you have Iowa. Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So next up is Rutgers, Maryland, because yes, Penn State, because they are going to want you have to throw them a bone, and that is the bone, and then Illinois because see previous conversation about Michigan State, Kentucky, or Mississippi State, Kentucky. Like, sure, why not? And Rutgers, Illinois again. Those are teams that are at the level where they will happily take another winnable game on their schedule. Like you're going into a season with, here are the auto losses. You have the one FCS team you're playing that's like an auto win probably, and then you have the 6 to 7 toss-ups. Like the more toss-ups you can get on that schedule, the better chance you have of getting to a bowl game, which is where those programs both are right now. So, yep, dude. I don't think anyone's fighting you on that one.
Yeah, and that you put that like the 11th game of the year where both those teams are fighting to win their 5th game, because then their 12th game is where they're fighting to win that 6th game to make the bowl. I have Northwestern instead of Penn State, but I have Illinois as well. And it's interesting that we've not had any of these threes where we've disagreed on more than one. And I don't see that happening with Wisconsin here.
No, yeah, Wisconsin is Minnesota for the Paul Bunyan-Axe game, Northwestern because it's close, and Iowa because sure. And I think you had a different one for, I don't think you had Iowa in there for Wisconsin. But
right, I have Nebraska instead of Iowa.
Nebraska. Yeah, but I mean, and you could flip those, and it's like, yeah, sure, fine. I mean, you could put Nebraska with Wisconsin and Iowa with Minnesota for that. I mean, like, whatever, it's fine. Like, it feels like those teams are more or less interchangeable here, where there's not a incredible historical rivalry you can't part with, but also there's not a, it's not a real weird fit. It's just kind of like, yeah, sure, fairly interchangeable. It's interesting to me that we ended up with such similar lists, because I think we approached it in a sort of different way. We had a guy in our board, Indiana Buckeye, who put together his own list, and I looked at it and I was like, he did a really nice job. I'll just run through these here, and you tell me if there's anything that you think he got way worse or way better than us. For Illinois, he had Indiana, Purdue, and Northwestern. Thought that was, they have, those are more natural geographical fits. Indiana, he had Purdue, Northwestern, Illinois. So those are just like straight up pods, basically. Iowa, he did Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska. Maryland, Rutgers, Michigan State, Penn State. Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, Minnesota. Michigan State, he did Michigan, Rutgers, Maryland. Minnesota, he did Michigan, Iowa, Wisconsin. Nebraska, he had Ohio State, Purdue, Iowa. Northwestern, he had Indiana, Wisconsin, Illinois. Ohio State, he had Michigan, Penn State, Nebraska, which is fascinating to me that we all approach this in different ways and ended up with the same 3 schools for Ohio State, one of which is not necessarily a natural fit. Penn State, he had Ohio State, Rutgers, Maryland. Shameful denigration of the land-grant trophy, IMO. Purdue, he had Indiana, Nebraska, Illinois. Rutgers was Penn State, Maryland, Michigan State. And Wisconsin was Iowa, Northwestern, Minnesota. I mean, I don't know if, this is probably a little bit of a, didn't necessarily approach it the same way we did, where your first rivalry is, everyone has the first one and then everyone has the second one. This Ohio State's first rivalry is going to be Michigan, but Penn State's first rivalry is Ohio State. So obviously it took a little bit of a different approach to it. But it's like, if you ended up with those, I don't know that I would say, oh no, that's, there are maybe a few weird ones, but not too many. And I don't really have any big issues with any of those either.
Well, and this is where how does Michigan State feel? Getting Michigan, Rutgers, and Maryland, that's pretty crappy, but are they okay with crap? Are they more about the wins than the stadium experience, the quality of the games, or do they just want wins? And there's going to be plenty of coaches who would be perfectly fine with, give me as many wins on my schedule as you can, and I will take it. And if fans are a little bummed, I think they're going to be happy being 10-2 instead of 8-4. So, like, after a game is played, fans don't necessarily care as long as you win. Like, leading up to it, it's like, man, I wish you were playing Ohio State instead of Maryland. But then you beat Maryland, and it's like, this is better than losing to Ohio State. So I think you're going to be happy.
This is better than being down 56-0 at halftime, in my opinion. It's interesting. You and I think, ended up with Michigan State maybe having the best schedule, or the most favorable schedule in terms of brands, and Michigan State playing Penn State, Michigan, and Indiana. And in his, it's Michigan, Rutgers, Maryland, where it's just sort of like the in-state rival and then the island of misfit toys. But even in this, to your point earlier about like you can't really complain. Like you're gonna get Penn State and Ohio State twice every 4 years. So you're going to play a home game against Ohio State once every 4 years. You're going to play a home game against Penn State once every 4 years. And you have just one of those teams on the schedule each. If you sort of have those offset in your schedule a little bit, it's a little bit more of a winnable game. And I don't think Michigan State's going to be a national championship contender anytime soon. But if Michigan State is what they were last year, which is you win most of your games, you win 10 games or whatever it is, and you make it to the Peach Bowl and you win the Peach Bowl, like, that's a pretty good team. You beat Michigan, you win the Peach Bowl, like that's a pretty good season by Michigan State standards. If you keep doing that every other year or so, that's going to be you're going to be coaching there you can coach there as long as you want, basically. So I am with you. I don't know. I think that competitively, like, yes, you're going to want to play Michigan, or, Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State every single year. But honestly, like, probably working out just fine for you if you don't.
And seeing him put Maryland and Rutgers, tying them to Michigan State and Penn State both, you're kind of punishing those two schools. But again, you're new here, so I mean, we've got to punish somebody, and it's going to be you. But I think I don't think any of us differ so wildly. So it feels like it can be done. Not everybody's going to love theirs, but they're going to like it plenty. And again, you'll still make up for it on the back end with the other teams if you're missing out on somebody. And I don't think anybody could. What I don't think they'll want to do is just hammer somebody, hammer a Maryland or a Rutgers. So I think there will have to be some concessions there to you. We're not going to give you Michigan and Penn State, something like that. The other question, Tom, if we're done talking about pods.
Well, the one thing I did want to figure out is, are they going to ask teams in advance, like, rank these things in order? What is the most important thing to you as an institution? Is it traditional rivalries? Is it, big names coming to my stadium? Is it competitive balance? Like, what is the most important thing to you? Because I think there are going to be different answers to different questions. Rutgers is going to want Penn State coming, but if Rutgers ended up with the Indiana Buckeye model, where it was Penn State, Maryland, and Michigan State, I think they'd probably be okay with that. And if they ended up with the Penn State, would Penn State be okay with Ohio State, Rutgers, Maryland? Because it's like you have two games where you're going to be playing. Every road trip you're going to fill the opponent's stadium. You also have two pretty easy wins, and you get Ohio State. Like, would they be okay with that, or do they really, really want Michigan or Michigan State on that schedule? And that's an institutional question that I don't know the answer. And it'd be interesting to know if the Big Ten is going to ask institutions beforehand to be able to take that into account in terms of putting this stuff together. Because if Rutgers says we want we want our close people in Penn State and Maryland, but also we want competitive balance, then throwing them with Illinois, like, they might be like, A-okay, like, yes, this is exactly what we wanted. Thank you very much, even though it's a little weird.
We used to do a college fantasy league where you would rank, the players are put into tiers, like, here are the top 12 running backs, here are the running backs 13 through 25, and so on. And you do that with quarterbacks and receivers. And you would go through on a piece of paper and rank everybody in terms of, like, okay, this is how I rank these 12 running backs. This is how I rank these 12 wide receivers. And then you rank the positions that you would draft them at, because it's basically you hand in the papers and then the draft happens based on how you've ranked stuff. So you don't necessarily know who you get until afterwards. But I wonder if you address these programs and say, hey, rank for us, what is your most important thing? What is your second most important thing? What is your third most important thing? And that way, like, we may not be able to get you your most important thing, but we got you your second and your third. So that's kind of equivalent to getting your first, if you will. But I do think you need to have input. And And now, granted, what does Ohio State's input is probably going to be the Big Ten's input as well. It's like, yes, we agree. You should have Michigan. Yes, we agree. You should have Penn State. And sure, whatever else, like there will be some that they don't have to ask, like Ohio State, even though Ohio State has maybe more say than anybody, but they all want the same thing. Whereas I do think you need Iowa. What do you want? Nebraska. What would just tell us what you want. Doesn't mean you're going to get it, but that way we know that can steer us and that can direct us. And sometimes we're going to go through that direction. We're gonna run through that stop sign basically. But if we have at least some of the guidelines that you would like us to follow, we can try. And then when you give Penn State nothing that they've asked for, then we will confirm that there is a vast Big Ten conspiracy against the Pennsylvania State University.
Do you know the last time Rutgers beat Penn State?
2014?
1988, because those two teams were both independents for quite a while, and Rutgers has beaten Penn State twice in 1918 and 1988. So they're due 2058. Watch your butt, James Franklin, or whoever's coaching Penn State. Almost there.
Almost, and certainly count the days. Tom, if you could add that to the morning scoop, that would be great.
The 2018 Rutgers-Penn State game is in 32,000 days. No, that'd be like 15,000. Yeah, almost.
We're into
30,000
now. Wow, it seems like just yesterday.
I can't even imagine the people who don't, who listen to that and don't listen to this, who are like, I'm sorry, what? Who? What?
And we have certainly done enough show for the daytime, but I did go ahead and I was trying to figure out what will the conference schedule, what will Ohio State's schedule look like next year. And frankly, we still don't know if it's going to be 9 games or 8 games. We talked a little bit on the morning scoop about how the Big Ten has tried 2 other times to get a scheduling or just this alliance. The first time was 2017. They were going to play the Pac-12, and that got scrapped when the Big Ten went to 9 game conferences. The alliance from a year ago, 2 years ago now, where it's like, hey, we're going to play each other, and that has kind of gone out the window. So it's like they want to do it, but they don't want to do it hard. Like they don't really want to do it. Now I wonder, will this get thrown back in there? But I think the problem with it, Tom, is if you go to 8 conference games so that you can play one of these alliance teams, you're eventually going to have to be playing them on the road at some point. And there will be at times with Ohio State's schedule right now, they've got road games almost every year. And do you know the last time Ohio State played 2 non-conference road games in a year?
I am going to say I know they did it twice in 1994. I mean, one of them was a neutral site game against Fresno State in Anaheim, and they played Washington on the road that year. I don't know if they've done it more recently than that. 2 non-conference road games in a season. I'm going to say 1994 and then be disappointed when I'm wrong.
Well, in 94, they were at Washington and they did Fresno State. 95, they did the kickoff classic against Boston College in New Jersey and also played at Pitt. That was the last time. They did in 86 as well. But do you know the last time they actually, and the thing with those 2 games, they were extra games. Like they're kickoff classics. So they didn't take away from their schedule. They just added to it to allow for that. But do you know the last time they played 2 non-conference road games, legitimate road games in the course of their regular schedule?
I am going to say with a great deal of certainty that I do not know.
1949. So to expect it to happen moving forward, I don't think we can.
Well, and they at one point were going to have road games against Washington and Texas the same year or something like that, or Washington or Texas and Boston College or something, and then they've shuffled those schedules again to avoid that. And the reason for that is Ohio State makes a set amount of money per home game, and when they're budgeting based on X amount times 6 home games or 7 home games or whatever. They're not going to be able, they're not going to do this off of 5 home games or 6 home games. You would like to have 7 or potentially 8 in a season. So yeah, that's the reason that's fairly inflexible. And then you also have, when you're going through these scheduling things, it's like, Michigan wants to have either Ohio State or Michigan State at home in any given season, and they just had to like flip-flop home games at one point to make that happen again. So, you have a bunch of scheduling concerns like that are not necessarily, front of mind in terms of competition or whatever. But from a budgetary perspective, this is also very important for them. The folks who are making those decisions, you may not care, but the folks who are making those decisions and who have the private phone numbers of the people who are making those decisions, they care very deeply about that sort of thing.
Yeah, and in 2023, they're at Notre Dame. 2024, they're at Washington. So I think we're going to stick with 9 Big Ten games. And then if they want to, there's still opportunities, of course, to play alliance games, but they've got their 3 non-conference games set for 2023, 2024, 2025, and 2026. 2027 is the first year they only have 2. 2025 they have 3 home games: Texas, Washington, UConn. They could conceivably throw a road game in there. It's just at this point, they keep siding against this alliance scheduling thing. And I think that's going to be the case moving forward again as well, unless they do some more changes. And again, the 2023 schedule, the Big Ten schedule, we don't know what it is yet. But considering Ohio State is getting 5 home games this year in Big Ten play, we should assume they're going to get 4 next year, because you can't just keep getting 5 home games every year. So assume next year they have 4 conference home games. I put together, Tom, next year's schedule if you want to see it, if you want to hear it.
Oh, I would love to hear it. I assume they're going to open on the road at Indiana, because it feels like about half the time that we travel to Indiana to go cover an Ohio State game, it's week 1 and on the road, or we at Minnesota or something, and they don't have a scheduled game until September 9th. So I'm going to guess they're going to open on the road somewhere week 1. What do you have?
That works for me. I really don't have a fall schedule, but it's like, you're going to have a home game. You're going to be on the road at Indiana. And if you want to put that September 2nd, because there is nobody there yet, that probably makes sense. A Thursday type of opener. So don't even call it September 2nd, call it August 31st. And then, you're going to have Youngstown State, Western Kentucky, then at Notre Dame. I'm going to send them to Purdue next year.
What could possibly go wrong?
And Purdue is here this year. Nebraska coming to town next year, going to Wisconsin, and then maybe a bye before Penn State. Penn State comes to town, Michigan State comes to town, Minnesota will come to town. Obviously, they'll go to Michigan. It's like I may only have like 8 conference teams here right now, because I'm trying to figure, can you add in that ACC or Pac-12 team, and which team would you throw in? But you can bring a team in next year and make them come to town, but eventually Ohio State's going to have to go on the road. Because the other thing, Tom, is you're going to be asking teams, if they do this alliance, to not have home and homes. And that's going to be a problem for a lot of schools. Like, no, you're not going to go to Ohio State, but next year Michigan State's going to come to town. So it's like, I guess that's okay, but it's hard to do there's only so much, the quid pro quo kind of fluctuates as you change teams. So I think that's another stumbling point into this whole alliance possibility as well.
I'm still on the, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Like, okay, fool me 3 times. Like, come on, I'm going to need to see a ball leave a tee inside a stadium before I believe this is actually going to happen for real this time. But I don't know that there's a reason you couldn't do a home and home where you just schedule Ohio State and Clemson for a home and home, or Ohio State and USC, or Ohio State and Utah, or whatever you want to do with whatever, Ohio State, Florida State. That would probably be a fun one. At least in terms of a helmet matchup, that would be a fun one. I don't know that there's any reason you couldn't do that, and it would frankly make things a lot easier. They don't do that necessarily with the Big Ten ACC Challenge. That's more of a year-by-year thing with basketball, where you're not, just because you play Duke at home this year doesn't mean you're going to Duke next year. But there's no real reason they couldn't do that. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach this. How they pretend to do this time before they cancel it again. But I would be. That's another one where I think you could do, Rutgers and Duke, Maryland and Wake Forest, and then have your Ohio State and Clemson, and your Michigan and USC, and your Oregon and Penn State, and like try and kind of do this in a way where you're playing teams that are kind of around your level in the way they kind of try to do with the Big Ten ACC Challenge. That would be fun. Play a home and home, like go see these teams, on their campuses, but I don't know how feasible it is given how far out these teams are scheduled, and are they going to want to play two really good Power 5 teams in one team, out of conference in one season? Probably not. So, this may be one of the things where reality gets in the way of what would otherwise be a really fun time.
Ooh, Tom, what about, I like the Big Ten ACC Challenge type of thing. This is our favorite, neutral sites.
Who says no? Me. I say no. Ohio State Clemson in the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers Stadium. Let's do it. Yes, that is the most fun possible way. It's the only thing more fun than Bowling Green, Kentucky, Tony. Any NFL stadium. That's what I say constantly. You hear me, we hang out a lot. We spend a lot of time on the road together. How often am I saying, I wish we were at another NFL stadium instead of these fun, wonderful campus environments. Tony, get me back to the Jerry Dome right now. I miss it so much.
Well, Tom, you picked the second best Bowling Green, first of all. If you send these two teams to the Doit, then we're going to have a good time. And the 12,000 people that fit into the stadium, I don't know what the number is. I'm sure it's not 12,000, but yeah, I'm with you. I think home and homes would work. It's a larger commitment, and it doesn't have the kind of movement that I think maybe they would prefer amongst the alliance. But again, they keep talking about it and wanting it, but they don't do anything. So I'm not sure how much movement they actually want to begin with. And it's just, it's just something that's nice to think about. You sit outside and you just look at the clouds and like, oh, that looks like Clemson. Oh, look at that cloud. It looks like USC. Oh, And then it starts raining and you go inside and you forget about it and you watch television and see what's going on with Walker, Texas Ranger. And then you forget everything about what you're thinking about to begin with. And so then 3 days later, you're like, oh, remember the Alliance? Those are the days. And that's it. Now it's over.
When you see USC in the sky, is it like, is that the transfer portal? What is that? Is that a vortex to another dimension? What is that? What?
Very much so. And it'll pick up people that don't even want to go to USC, but end up there. Tom, I think we've gone on quite long enough. Is there anything else that you wanted to discuss? I will also mention 2024, my favorite kind of season, 2 bye weeks.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how that always works based on like when Labor Day falls. Generally, that's how that's determined. Yeah, two bye weeks is nice because then you can take if you are the type who travels and covers the team, which is not very many people, but very convenient for us. You can take one weekend and go see a football game somewhere else. Then you can take another weekend and do all of the apple picking and what have you that you miss out on in a typical fall schedule. So yeah, I am always in favor of a week to go watch something else, whether that's go down to Athens and watch the Ohio Bobcats, or go find a game somewhere else. And Tony, I bet our wives would love it if we were like, we've decided we're going to do a separate road trip, and we've always wanted to see a game at Darrell K. Royal Stadium. Let's see who Texas is playing. Let's see. How about Jordan Hare? Let's go see Auburn just because. I mean, this is we want to see what a stable football program looks like in person. So we're going to go see Auburn. Let's do it.
No, and every year I have that thought, like, ooh, what's going on in the bye week? I would love to go see this. I would love to go there. But then by the time the season hits, the only thing I want to do, like after 4 weeks of not being able to watch as much football as I want to do, is like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going to watch football. Tom, you don't have that same luxury all the time. But yeah, it's like, it's always fun to think about, but then the time comes to do it, and you're like, I'm just going to stay in.
What if I didn't have to get in a car and drive 13 hours somewhere this weekend? What about that? Would that be okay? Seems like that would be okay.
Oh, dare to dream. Anything else, Tom, before we go?
I sure hope not. We're at an hour and 5, so I think their listeners have gotten their money's worth on this free episode. So I think we're probably okay for the day.
I do kind of sort of have a show planned for later in the week, but if we don't do one, then just let this show suffice. But I assume we will be back later in the week. So I want to thank you all for tuning in and joining us. Thank you for tolerating this show as Tom and I just talk back and forth about stuff, the schedule, and no real rundown, but hopefully you guys were engaged and enlightened and educated. And that would be a first and tremendous for all of us. So thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you all later.